Hi, everybody. I'm Rogers Healy, the host of Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. And today we have someone that I love him already because we have almost the same name. He's got a background in being himself. Broken road led to some significant success. And this gentleman has catapulted his career because he's captured everything that he is, ranging from being a husband, a dad, a former gym rat, to someone who was a brand marketing director at Nike. Now he is a business owner in the great state of Texas. We got him back from the Pacific Northwest. He's a Dallas guy. He is a well-traveled man. He's a storyteller, someone that I became a fan of when we met for the first time today, but I've been following his journey through multiple angles, through the branding angle, through CrossFit, through SMU, and most recently as a fellow business owner. He is now the owner of Perseus Creative. I was over here saying it 8 times in a row before, but he's the owner of Perseus. There we go. Of Perseus Creative. His name is Jordan Rogers, and we're excited to have you here today. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Before we get started, that's not a Detroit Tigers hat.
Nope.
What is it?
Fear of God. Jerry Lorenzo. It's a brand. Jerry Lorenzo is a guy who designed streetwear. It's kind of he calls it American luxury. So it's like streetwear, sort of streetwear meets a little bit of high fashion, but American made.
This is a vest.
Oh, I like that vest.
From Mizzen and Main.
It's, love American that Mizzen and Main brand.
Yeah.
I heard Kevin's podcast.
Yeah, he did a great
job. Yeah, totally. So Jerry Lorenzo, Fear of God, love it.
Yeah.
It's good reminder to have a fear of God, but also you can be cool and fashionable too.
Just like God. God was fashionable.
That's right. God, yeah, maybe he was.
God would be a great guest on this podcast.
Wow. Yeah, totally. I've got questions.
Yeah. I don't know if you have a direct connection to him. I know you're really...
I do have a direct connection. It's available to all of us.
Okay.
But I don't always get the exact right answers, and I'm not going to pretend to have them. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
So back to Jordan Rogers and kind of what got you here. A question we've started to ask all of our guests is maybe give us the... not elevator pitch, but maybe not the whole biopic, because that's going to be out in a few years. And
totally.
So what's the story? How do we get to know you better?
The story, as it goes in a lot of places. I grew up here in Dallas, Texas, product of Richardson. Shout out to Richardson. I grew up obsessed with sports. We're a similar age, so we grew up in the Michael Jordan era. Bo Jackson, Ken Griffey Jr., Deion Sanders, Charles Barkley. These are the athletes who are on my wall.
Andre Agassi.
Andre Agassi, dude. Yes. It's huge.
Golly, just the Nike athletes back in the 80s and 90s. I'm confident we grew up in the greatest generation, the last great generation of music, entertainment, and true sports. Freaking Mark McGuire, Canseco, Ken Griffey Jr., I had all their shoes.
I know.
Oof.
Me too. Well, I think every generation has something new to offer, and this one has some really interesting ones too, which we can talk about with NIL stuff.
Yeah.
But that generation, I think, was certainly influential in my life. I don't know whether it was the greatest or not, but it had a ton of power because I created this like insane brand loyalty to Nike, and that has transcended my life and ultimately led to a career. But so grew up obsessed with sports. But here in Texas, as you may know, at least in Dallas, I was a jack of all trades, master of none. So I loved Bo Jackson and that Bo Knows campaign because, Bo knew golf, Bo knew basketball, Bo knew baseball, Bo knew football. I like to play all sports, but I was kind of a master of none. And so by the time you reach junior high in Dallas,
remember what he didn't know? I'm going to bring a music tie in here.
Oh, Bo didn't know diddly. That's right.
There we go.
Yeah,
okay, sorry.
Exactly. Well played there.
Thank you. Bo Diddley, everyone watching and listening, was a famous guitarist and singer. He was like a poor man's B.B. King, but he struck pay dirt when Bo didn't know diddly. Anyway.
And he made a cameo in that campaign.
Yep.
So when I showed promise in like golf, which I love today. I'm obsessed, but back then, golf wasn't very cool when you're like 13. I wanted to play basketball, and I wasn't really cut out to play basketball at a high level, I don't think. Either that or I didn't have a practice ethic. I didn't have like that work ethic at the time. I just wanted to like lower the goal and dunk. And that did not help me try to make the varsity team. So fell out of sports, which had been this huge part of my life growing up. And also should say I grew up in an amazing household, loving parents, loving grandparents, and awesome younger sister. And so anyway, but in the absence of that big vacuum in my life, I turned to basically like drugs and alcohol, just partying. The party sort of soured pretty quickly at the beginning of the opioid epidemic, or really, and so I was sort of square in the middle of the war on drugs and the opiate epidemic, and so got introduced to heroin at like 15 years old, which is unfortunate. And so by 21, I was incarcerated. I got arrested for the first time at 14, again at 19. So by 27, I basically spent like half my life on community supervision or probation of some sort. And so that informs a lot of the work that I do today that I'm kind of passionate about in the criminal justice space. When I'm trying to bring transformation there, or just bring education to people who are not familiar with it. And so anyway, wound up incarcerated for 13 months, came out, spent a few months in the Salvation Army off of Harry Hines.
Working there?
Living there.
Living there.
And then started piecing my life back together one by one. So while I was incarcerated, I sort of reconnected with my mind, body, and spirit. So growing up loving sports, by the time I got incarcerated, I was, fully addicted to heroin, shooting dope. I was 116 pounds.
Wow.
So like if you're watching this, I'm 166 pounds today.
Wow.
So if you took 50 pounds off of me, like I was like an emaciated skeleton. I was dying. And so when I was facing a long time in prison for minor possession charges, but I kept violating. And so I thought I was going to have to go away for a long time. I was facing 5 to 20 years in prison. And so I started doing push-ups, some out of like survival technique, but also it just started then. I knew that I was going to have to do something drastically different if they let me out again, to not go back to shooting heroin. And so it was like, I started doing push-ups, pull-ups on the shower bars, running in place, like deck of cards workouts and all these things in there, and got really, it started to help my mind and my body feel better. And so
how old were you? In your late 20s?
I was 21 at the time. And so got out, I think, at 22. And so today when I talk to college athletes, it's like I'm talking to them meeting at this point where like I was starting my life over. And so it was really interesting to just kind of reflect on that today. But so got out and tried to keep up that love of fitness and health and wellness, and became a personal trainer. Like started going to community college, working, took like one class to see if I could do it, and then took another in community college, and then did community college for a couple years, transferred into SMU, and ended up getting my degree there. I tried to go to the business school, so this is what I actually love.
Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get in?
They did not try to let me in.
Exactly.
No,
They didn't let me in either,
Advertising
Roger.
major,
Oh, and let me guess. Do they invite you to come back and speak at SMU?
Not in the business school.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Actually, you know what? I did speak at the business school
Yeah,
last year, and full circle. I was like, this is the first time I've actually ever been in here. They're like, why?
Yeah.
I was like, because I couldn't get in because I could not pass statistics.
God, I love this. This makes me so happy.
Yeah, the power of being a Rogers.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and also just business statistics.
Dude,
was one of the. I couldn't do it.
Literally.
Accounting, like
No,
just
I
whipped
didn't even
my
get
ass.
to accounting. What'd you end up majoring in?
So I did the business subset.
Oh, you did financial application, economics with financial application?
No, I tried to do the subset of whatever the foundations to get into the business school, and it was like such a poetic end that it was my last course was accounting. I needed like a B-.
Nope.
And I did all the extra credit and everything, and I had like a 79 and a 0.4, and begged the woman. I still remember Carolyn Davidson, that professor. She wouldn't round me up. I mean, fair was fair, but I'm so grateful. I got a degree in ancient history.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And so like history came alive to me.
I was advertising.
Advertising, yeah.
Which I never thought I would use, but
here you are.
yeah. Thanks.
It turns out you're a great advertiser. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. So
Yeah. So I, anyway, I find great irony in that. So they love to welcome me back and speak. Next, if they ever invite me to the business school, I'm going to make sure they give me an honorary business degree. But
you and I just need a statue.
Yeah,
in front of
outside
Cox.
there,
It's
just the Rogers.
Rogers.
Yeah, totally. Rogers shared statues. No, I mean, I'm super grateful for my time there. I look back and like, if you're talking about being you and how we celebrate you, like I'm super grateful for my ancient history degree.
Yeah.
And I try to tell people like, if you, that first thing that you try, maybe plan B is the plan A, And so,
I like that. That's our nugget. We do like a nugget. That's it. That's your line.
Maybe plan B is your plan A. Well, for me, plan A was to try to get into the business school so I could be an entrepreneur. And I wanted to get into marketing. And I actually saw this brochure with a kid who had interned at Nike. And I was like, God, that would be amazing. But, it turns out marketing is all about storytelling. And I find that in ancient history, you really study the stories that last forever. And it turns out that ancient history and marketing are more about stories than they are about studies. So I eventually was able to work in marketing at the highest level at one of the greatest brands in the world.
Well, you got to get us there. You got to bring it back.
Yeah, I will. So, all right. So I'm putting my life back together. I go to SMU. I become a personal trainer, and I'm working at the Deadman Fitness Center. I started at 24 Hour Fitness, and I'm just putting like one foot in front of the other. Like, man, honestly, when I came out, I just wanted to not put a needle in my arm. Literally, I said, I had this this kind of my, come to Jesus moment, or like my great awakening or rock bottom was like, anyway, in this jail cell halfway through my incarceration. And I was just like, I really want a boring and dull life at this point. My life has been too exciting. Like, it's been too full of like, highs and lows. And I just want like boring. Like if the most fun I get to have is to go bowling on Friday night with some old AA drunks, smoking cigs and drinking coffee, like, then so be it. And like, I just want to settle down and like not rock the boat and just go. And so, it turned out I got to do a lot more than that, but,
bowling on a Tuesday.
Yeah. Bowling on a Tuesday. Exactly. I do play a lot of ping pong, these days, but, so anyway, got that degree, and I, got a degree in history, came out, I wanted to teach. So I was going to, teach history and work in the inner city and try to like coach and try to bring back that love of sports, maybe coach basketball or something, and try to reach kids while I was young and tattooed. And it turned out my record, that was one of the only things that my record prevented me from doing, was like working with students at the time. And so I guess I understood that. I think I could have been a good teacher, but
it sounds like you kind of are now, right?
Yeah, I'm going back full circle. And I mean, just shameless plug to advocate for people. Like, I just feel like giving people a scarlet letter who come out of incarceration. I was not convicted of a felony. I had been charged with one, possession, and was able to get deferred adjudication. And, because of that, when you go to like work at a big corporation, they ask you if you've been convicted of a felony. And I had not. So I was able to get past that. But I hope that people see my life and see that, hey, even you can make a lot of mistakes and still be a great human, and there is redemption available for you, and there is grace, and there is also the sky can be the limit. And so I hope people can see my story and see that other people need a second chance more often, even ones who've been given the felony scarlet letter. They need that second chance as well.
And you're only 40.
Yeah.
And you're a family man, which obviously is the greatest accomplishment you've had. But
Amen.
To get back to the worldly accomplishments, you go to SMU, you get out of jail at 21, you redefine yourself doing push-ups and perspective, and graduate from a great college, and all of a sudden you decide to go bring it back to full circle. Ken Griffey Jr., Charles Barkley.
Yep.
Bo Jackson, Deion Sanders, all these Nike athletes that are just kind of singing to your soul.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you end up at Nike. So, I mean, obviously, dream job for anybody.
Yeah. I didn't all of a sudden end up there. It took me 4 years of, can we cuss on the podcast?
Yeah.
4 years of bitch work. But,
we've had more words that are more offensive.
Okay. Well, we'll see. I need to clean it up. But so I get denied on the teacher thing, and I'm like, gosh, well, I really just want to do something.
So you just canceled out bitch work by saying gosh.
Yes, gosh. So, gosh darn it.
Gosh darn it.
There we go. So I go to the mall one day, and I buy this pair of shoes, and I come home, and my next door neighbor is a man, a legend around Dallas. His name is Duncan. and he was the manager at Luke's Locker. And he's like this South African guy who's like this, footwear running genius. And I tell him, like, we're literally talking like, Tim the Toolman Taylor over the fence. And I'm like, man, I just bought another pair of shoes against my will. And I have no idea, but I have this crazy, insane brand loyalty for Nike. And I can't explain it. There's a couple brands that I have that for. And he was like, Nike people are cut from a different cloth. And you might be cut from that cloth. You should go inside and look up this job. It's called the Ekin role. And Ekin is Nike spelled backwards. I find some like
taken me all day. Like,
yeah, I know Ekin. What? It's Ekin, and it's Nike backwards. And their job is to know Nike backwards and forwards. So they're brand evangelist, tech reps, or they're not in sales, but they teach people who sell Nike at big accounts how about the history and heritage of the brand, about the latest innovation. And they're just kind of like stewards of the brand in the big cities. There's like 25 to 30 of them across the country. So I see this job. And at the time, there was very obscure information on it. This is 2008. We were also in a global recession, all kinds of stuff. I didn't realize at the time all the barriers I was kind of going up against. Nike was restructuring their company at the time. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to have this job. Like, this is insane. Somebody gets paid to talk about sneakers all day. And that they get to go to the biggest sporting events and all. Like, I gotta have this. So I basically just like put my head down and found the guy who's the Ekin. His name's Mark Lau. He's a Dallas native. He's amazing. He's still at Nike. And he kind of took me under his wing and was like, all right, you want to do it? Like, well, first you need to work in retail at Nike. That helps. So I started working at the Nike factory store out in Allen. They offered me $750 an hour. I was like, I have a college degree. Can I not get more? They're like, okay, I think we can do $775. So I did that. And then I was personal training that time. So I did for 2 years and basically just like schlepping boxes, setting up tents, doing anything. I just bothered the hell out of Mark and anybody else who worked at Nike. I would just be like, what can I do for you? How can I help?
Single at the time?
Yep, single at the time. And by the way, how can I help? Those 4 words are the best 4 words that I would tell anybody who's trying to do anything in business or in life. They're the most helpful words ever.
Yeah.
When you're kind of at a loss, just how can I help? So I would just follow people around, try to be helpful, and try to get in where I fit in. And so I did that. And I would just try to develop any skill to make me attractive to Nike because I had nothing. Like, I didn't have a business degree. I wasn't a college athlete. I didn't have an internship. I didn't have many accolades. My GPA was not great. And so I just was trying to make myself marketable. So I picked up a camera at one point, and because so I did a couple years at factory store, realized at the time that I needed to go work for a marketing agency to be like a brand ambassador. That was the thing that was changing at the time. So, when Nike does these big campaigns, or maybe even when you do events, you hire out like a marketing agency who helps you execute that event. So it's not actually oftentimes people who work for Nike Inc. who are like setting up the tent and welcoming you, or like if you see something at the Super Bowl, like Verizon and someone's with an iPad trying to get you to sign up for something, or AT&T, it's often not a person who actually gets a paycheck from AT&T. It's someone who gets a paycheck from an agency. And so I started doing that. And that was awesome. I traveled all over Texas working with high school athletes, doing these like football camps. And at the time I was working with these 2 other guys who were just big, jacked football players. And they were like, Nike loves photo recaps, and they built, photos, videos. And so they were like, we had this fancy camera on the van, and they were like, hey, like, you seem kind of techie. Why don't you figure out this camera thing? And so I did. That led me to early adopt Instagram. And I eventually started building an Instagram following, and I got on the suggested users list, which is like Instagram at that time is where TikTok is today. So basically like exploding, 1 million people a day signing up.
Wow.
And at the time they would have 200 people on this list at a time for a couple weeks. And basically when you signed up, today they would send you to like Justin Timberlake or I don't know, somebody. But at the time they were like, hey.
Oh, I know what you're saying. Like, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'd be like, you might like to follow this person. And so my following grew by like 1,000 people a day.
Oh my gosh.
Each time that I was on that list, and I was on it twice. So
and what's your name before I forget?
Oh, at Jordan Rogers 26.
26.
Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks, everybody. I'm on Instagram most.
I'm looking now. Keep talking.
Yeah, okay. So that comes full circle because that little following and that experience of like just being socially and digitally savvy has really helped me grow my business, my brand. Like I tell people all the time, and I'm not lying to like college athletes, you know, Instagram has done more for my career than LinkedIn or anything else ever could.
Yeah.
It's been remarkable. I connect with the coolest, craziest people all over the world because of my Instagram. It is so wild. So anyway,
even though we connected from LinkedIn,
and I don't, it's probably, but I didn't respond to you for like a month, I think, on LinkedIn because I'm just not there that much. And we can circle back to that. My biggest problem right now, I have questions for you. You're a man who does a lot of things, and I've got my hands on a lot of things right now, but
Nike.
So after 4 years, they finally let me in, and they let me. I created a short film. I created my resume. Then you needed a portfolio. You had to do like this how-to presentation and this panel interview process. It was crazy. They put you basically like through hazing, and then I created a short film, which is what kind of took me over the top. So Kelly and Kevin Liu are the Liu brothers. They're out in LA now, but they were from Dallas. They were in film school at the time, and I convinced them to help me make a little short film for this video. I had like a budget of like $250, which was huge at the time for me. I was so broke by this point. And they are awesome, man. I just love those guys. And they originally took the interview because they thought I was a famous radio DJ. I think they thought I was Ben Rogers from Ben and Skin.
Oh my gosh! I just talked
my
to him
guy.
this morning.
Yeah, they're so good. I love them.
Funny.
Yeah, they're great.
He needs to be on the Rogers statue too. And when I told him about this, he was actually really pissed.
Oh.
He's like, "How did I not think of it first?" Because he's wanting to do a podcast.
Oh, Rogers,
as well.
yeah. He started one, like I think just a few weeks ago.
Really?
Skin was his first guest.
Makes sense.
Those are my guys. I love them. But so anyway, made the film. They let me in. So I became an Eakin. Absolute freaking dream job. I got hired at 30. I was a little bit older than most of the Eakins, but it was cool. I always tell people like, you know, if you're struggling,
were you like an Eakin? Were you like the guy?
Eakin?
Yeah. See?
Nah, man. I'm good. I was health and wellness has been a thing. I feel good. 5 years into my career, after I was killing myself and I had a really unhealthy relationship with work, I was aching. That's for sure. And I kind of pivoted and
were you more like a Clay Aiken?
Clay Aiken, also a Dallas native, right?
Oh yeah, he is.
Yeah, okay.
Great American Idol. Clay Aiken and God are going to be my next podcast guests.
Adam.
At the same time. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Aiken.
All right.
35.
So I was an Aiken, and then eventually just kind of worked my way up and worked my way through brand marketing. Spent a lot of time in American football. Did a couple years in Nike women's and finished out my career in Nike basketball. Getting to work with coolest athletes.
You got like who?
Okay. So you want to know more about Nike?
Well, whatever.
Okay.
I want to get to the journey of you being a business owner and with NIL.
Okay. Well, then here's how it works. So I was an Aiken in Dallas. And the primary sport that Nike was investing in Dallas, Texas, you could probably guess, but it's American football. And I say American football because at Nike, you refer to soccer as global football.
Oh, really?
Because of the rest of the globe calls it football, except for us in America. So
football Americano.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Sí, por supuesto.
Yeah.
So I was in American football, and I wasn't a football player, but that's what was happening. And so, you know, when I share wisdom to people, it's like, get in where you fit in. I just started following around the football people once I had the Aiken job. And I was like, how can I help you in football? And they needed like consumer insights research. And so they would often find like a 17-year-old high school football player who was like kind of a big prospect. And it would just be like, Nike would make products for this kid. So they would think about a consumer profile. And a lot of time people make up the consumer. They'll go, oh, Jane is 25 and she likes this and she likes that. So they would actually find a kid and do a deep dive on him. And when I got it, it was like a Word doc. It was like a kid's profile picture and all these questions. And I was like, well, that doesn't seem like that would help them very much. So again, I went back to my film stuff and I grabbed a director or a videographer and was like, hey, what if I go follow this kid from the time he wakes up in the morning to like the end of the day? And they were like, okay. And I like pitched for a budget. I think I got $500. And we followed this kid, literally went to his bedroom at like 6 a.m. And he had like a trunk. He had a trunk of offer letters from every school you could imagine. This is a real kid,
story.
yeah. Down at DeSoto High School, and he was this top recruit, and just followed him around, followed him to class, then followed him after school to practice, saw what was in his locker, what's in his backpack, what does he want, what is he listening to, where does he get his style influences. So, and created this like little, again, another short film. And like the people up at campus were like, God, this is awesome. Like, okay. And the people down here were like, that's awesome. Thank you. So I got into American football that way. So I just started to obsess, like, what does the consumer want? So then I got into a marketing position in football down here, worked with a lot of the big high schools, Allen High School, DeSoto, Cedar Hill, got to work with Coach McGuire, who's now at Texas Tech. And Kyler Murray was coming up during that time. So I got to know Kyler and his family really well. And that was awesome. And then they pulled me up to campus and they said, hey, we want you to come up here to North America and be the North America brand manager for Nike Football. And that led me to being able to manage some of our big pro athletes. And so I was
in Portland?
I was in Portland, Oregon. My wife and I moved up there when she was 6 months pregnant with my son.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's your son's name?
His name is Calvin.
I thought it was Eakin.
No, yeah, almost, yeah.
All right. Well,
No, I like the brand a lot, but not quite that much.
his name is Swoosh.
Yeah, totally. That's actually what Kyler's dog is named.
Swoosh?
Yep. Anyway, so
Portland.
I was, and look, this informs some of my personal branding stuff, which I teach college athletes. Is like, so I wasn't a football player. A lot of people who worked in American football were former football players. What I was like a creative kid, and I was like creative. I love the arts. They often like had a running joke that I would always try to bring street art into every campaign we did, or some kind of art and an artist. So I loved art. I was into sneakers all the way growing up, and so I was kind of a sneakerhead. And so when it came time to re-sign one of the biggest American football players of a generation, Odell Beckham Jr., they turned to me and were like, hey, I had written this plan on like how we should utilize him and do all these cool cleats and stuff. And they were like, hey, we need to re-sign this guy. Where's that plan that you wrote a while ago?
No pressure.
And so this is like actually also another principle of entrepreneurship, because I get the question now a lot, like you were with Nike, why? It was one of those early indicators that I was an entrepreneur. Like, so the best things that I did at Nike, no one asked me to do. I just did them or pitch people. And then they turned out to be cool, you know? So I had to do my job, and that was a hard learning. So it was like, do all the basics that everyone's asking you to do, and then you can like go do your fun projects.
Is it like a desk? I mean, are you there certain hours a day, or since you're in the creative space, was it kind of a lot of liberty and you could just pick and choose when you wanted to check in?
No, which also led me to leave. But
Noted.
Yeah,
Are you
these
wearing Nikes today?
This is one of the only pair of non-Nikes that I have.
Okay, sorry, we won't zoom in on the
It's
feed.
all good. No, it's fine. I have a closet full of Nikes. This is one of the only pairs of shoes that I wanted while I was there. Again, fear of God. I really wouldn't do the hat shoe hook, but we call it a head to toe look in the biz,
Noted.
which I'm not usually a fan of. But anyway, so yeah, they asked me to write this brand plan, and I eventually then got to be a part of the courting process to court Odell to re-sign with us, and got to lead that process. And then I got to lead his brand, be Odell Beckham Jr.'s brand manager for a couple of years.
Wow.
And work with all our other pros like Saquon Barkley and Russell Wilson and Travis Kelce and all these cool, like just awesome athletes.
Make you feel like a kid?
Yes.
Nothing
and
wrong
an
with
adult.
that. Yeah.
Well, so I felt like a kid when I got to meet like Barry Sanders, and I was like, oh my gosh. But
This tall?
oh yeah, I mean yeah. Anyway, you know, people like that, I would feel like a kid, and then I would feel like a real adult when I'd be meeting these 19, 22-year-old athletes, though. You know,
We're twice their age now.
yeah, and that's what I try to remind people. Like, people just anyway, I have all kinds of takes on that. People just think these guys are not human. You know, because they see them through a television screen, I think. They're human, just like you and me, like, you know?
It's hard. I don't know if meeting like athletes or actors, but like, there's still a part of me, like, and I'm really into the music stuff. it's so hard for me to play it cool, which I'm thankful for. Where there's a fine line between drooling and being a fanboy, but
Yep.
I think that they can feel the authenticity of when you say like you were my hero growing up. They believe it. And
Yeah.
there's a few people I don't think I ever should meet. Like if I met Bo Jackson, I couldn't play it cool. and
Yeah.
Deion Sanders is a great client, a great friend, and it's still weird for me that I'm like. It's so and
Deion, yeah, totally.
I'm like it's freaking the greatest athlete of all time.
I know.
And but
I love Deion,
but you have to treat it like your job sometimes.
Yeah,
and I think that's a hard thing for people like me, maybe not like you, or I don't have an ounce of cool in me, and it's hard. Even walking in here sometimes, it's like so hard to put a game face on and talking to guys like you. It's a different conversation.
Well, I don't know if it's because of like my background, like being incarcerated. I work with heroin addicts every day.
Yeah.
And people are coming out of prison. And I just it just sort of helps ground me on like, we're all human, man. And, working with these athletes too, they're human. They have struggles.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I just become sympathetic to what they're going through. And that's what I'm trying to help them with today. But
we got to bring it there.
I know. So anyway, worked with all the cool athletes, traveled the world, met all the athletes, the artists. Went all over. It's so freaking amazing.
Who was the pinnacle of all the meetings that you had? Who's the one person you met where you're like, all right, this is next level? Did you ever meet Phil Knight?
In the lunchroom.
Really?
One time. But here's one of the things that Nike taught me, which I like, and so you very strict rules at Nike. Like you never ask an athlete for an autograph.
Yeah.
You never ask for a picture. You treat them. It's the best parts of Nike are like the Sports Center commercials. You open the elevator and the athlete walks in, or they walk by the cubicle. That happens at Nike all the time.
Really?
And I would be giving people tours like, and we literally opened the elevator and like Maria Sharapova walked out. And I was telling one of my friends, Paul, actually from Dallas. We grew up together. He was up there in Oregon. We were walking through, I was telling him about that, and we walked by and Drake is like right next to us, and so.
Don't do it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And you just you learn and you just go, hey, what's up, man? How are you? And it starts to train this just calm, and then you're working with them on another level. So for me, it's probably Virgil Abloh, Virgil of Off-White. Are you familiar? You have no ounce of cool. Okay. All right. So Virgil Abloh is...
this vest is kind of cool.
Yeah, totally. It's
a cool vest.
It is. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Virgil just passed away at the age of 42.
Oh,
actually,
I do know who this is.
Louis Vuitton men's creative director, formerly came up with Kanye West, was his creative director for a long time out of Chicago, and he was just like this. He did all the famous Nikes and he created Off-White and helped resurrect the brand in a lot of ways. But I took Odell one time. The craziest trip for me was we took Odell to meet his idol, which was Cristiano Ronaldo. And Cristiano was playing against Neymar for PSG versus Real Madrid in Paris during Paris Fashion Week. And so we take Odell to Paris first to see this game. And we have a little suite where we connect him with Virgil Abloh. So it's like me, Odell, his sports marketing rep, and his mom traveled Paris to Madrid. And we're in this little suite with maybe 5 other people, another famous quarterback, but and 3 other Nike people and Virgil, and we're just hanging out and signing shoes and all this kind of stuff. And so that was a moment where I just kept pinching myself. I wasn't playing it cool. So for me, it's not the person, but I would just sit there. And then I was sitting in Real Madrid. There's a picture everywhere that I use of me sitting in Real Madrid, looking like this, like a kid in a candy store with Odell and Cristiano Ronaldo behind me. And I'm like, who am I? I was in a jail cell, and now I'm sitting in the Real Madrid practice facility with Odell and Cristiano Ronaldo. What the hell is going on?
But now you're here in the Rogers That studio, which is even a bigger...
And now I'm pinching myself right now.
Yeah, no, I'm, it's a Rogers moment.
It is.
So you go through this, and and again, you reach the pinnacle pretty quickly. And to keep the podcast premise at the forefront, you've got to realize that there's something there that maybe you're not experiencing, and you're a very successful person, and you found love. You found you're able to be a father and to Calvin, and now there's still something that's burning inside of you that is not Nike.
Yeah.
And that had to be probably a hard thing to face, but you did it.
Oh my gosh, so hard. So we had moved up to Oregon. We had our daughter, Joy, a couple years later. So I have a 2-year-old and I have like a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old when the pandemic hits. And we're living in Portland, and we survived through the spring and the summer. We had a 1,100 square foot house. It was small, relatively speaking. And we had a big yard. So the spring and the summer were fine. We're working from home. Nike is 100% remote. And so now we're sitting in a 1,100 square foot house that is my office, our bedroom, our gym, because gyms weren't open. The pandemic experience was quite different in Portland, Oregon, and Texas. So everything was closed. And so we were fine until like the fall and the winter hit. And in the fall and the winter in Portland, I struggled most years because it just rains for like 7 months straight. And so we just got to this breaking point of like parenting in a pandemic in Portland, Oregon was like, we got to go and we got to get back home. Our family and all our friends are here. And, I just had to sort of ask myself, I believe, that my primary job in life is to serve my wife, Rain, and my secondary job in my life is to serve my children. And if I get to go, even if when we go back to work, if I get to go to these spaceship buildings and work with the coolest athletes in the world, what good does that do for them if I'm not taking care of them pretty well? And so we were sitting there and it was just like, we got to go. And it was so, dude, it was brutal. I spent a lot of time working to try to get this job, and I'd had success, and there was a very clear path to leadership for me. Like I'd already kind of cracked the ceiling of getting into the director level, which is like young executive. And so it was
But sometimes plan B is plan A.
That's right. So basically, have you ever read Atomic Habits?
No, but thanks for asking.
Okay.
I'm not a reader.
Oh, well, you have plenty of other great qualities. James Clear sends out the email. I abhor email, but he sends out one each week. And it said, if your best friend was dealing with the biggest problem you're dealing with today, what would you tell them? And I was sitting here going, what am I going to do? I'm leaving Nike. And what I would tell myself is I'd look back over my whole career and be like, dude, you're going to be fucking fine. Look at all you've overcome.
That's a big cuss word.
That is a big one. Sorry, but that's how I felt. It was like, dude, you're going to be fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you went broke today, I'd be like, Rogers, you're going to be fine. You will rebuild this because you've had so much success in other areas. And that's what I felt like. So we made the move. I got to end up working for Nike completely remotely for like another year.
From Dallas?
Yeah, from Dallas while I was thinking about it. And that was the ideal scenario, but Nike just said like they wanted people back on campus. So in May of 2022, they said, we got to pull everybody back. So you need to live here or at least need to be here 3 days a week. And I was like,
Which is worse.
Yeah. So the cruel irony of Nike, which transitions me into this new space, is they expected me to be creative and think outside the box. And the higher I got in the company, the less creative I got to be. And so I just feel like I'm bursting with creativity.
And the thing with creativity too, it's like you can't be forced.
Yeah.
Right? It can't be like today for 20 minutes you're going to be creative.
Yeah.
It's got to be a natural, and I struggle with that too. It's got to be natural, and it's got to be just out of spur of the moment where you hear a song or you experience something, you're like, all right, that's how I'm going to go do it. Versus like, all right, here you go. So
totally.
You had to recognize that.
Yeah. So I basically said, I'm 40. I've been there 10 years. I like round numbers. I got to go and I've always said, people ask me how your success is at Nike. It's because I'm entrepreneurial, which was ironic. And so I was like, I just have to give myself, I got to call my own bluff. So,
it's so tough. I think that's so freaking tough. And I don't know if it's because we're at an age, I'm experiencing to different scales or different, situations, but once you realize it and you actually make the decision, I think that's so overwhelming, but you did it.
Yeah.
And obviously you did it too with the help of social media, which you can't back down, you can't back out once you've done that.
Totally. I basically realized NIL. So in all of my workings with high school athletes, college athletes, and then the pros, the fact that college athletes could not make money always drove me crazy. And then I would work really closely with NFL players and realize that even them, you have to make it to your second contract to make it for real. And everybody looks at them like, oh, they got $1 million. Like, well, $1 million goes really quick when anyway. And so I just had this real passion for like college athletes. Like if they can set a foundation where they are, and now the NIL, like I don't know. I think it's the justice streak in me, but I hated the NCAA and the fact that they wouldn't let college athletes make money. And so when NIL came, I was like, hey, that's really interesting. And then I started to look at how do I turn a perceived disadvantage into an advantage? And so I had to work in Dallas, Texas. Nike wouldn't let me work in Dallas, Texas. When you get into the like fashion sports industry, everybody wants you to work in LA or New York or Chicago, maybe San Francisco. And so I finally was just like, well, I'm down here in college football, college sports Mecca, and there's not that many other people. The big agencies are out on the coast. So like, I'm just going to do it here. So I've founded Perseus Creative. My primary focus, it's a solo consultancy, is to serve college athletes, to teach them about personal branding, what it is, to remove some of the mystique of it, how to pitch and partner with companies, so how to get on the initiative and go after and like work with companies. You don't have to wait on them. And then how to serve others and use their platform for good. So it sort of takes all of these elements we've been talking about in my life story into teaching them now.
And what is Perseus? What's the origin of that?
So Perseus is a Greek mythological figure. When I finally got to study abroad at SMU, I went to Florence, and there's a statue by Cellini, which was done during the Renaissance, and it's this incredible, probably can't get the sleeve up, but it's the statue of Perseus holding Medusa's head. Wow. Medusa was terrorizing a city-state. Perseus took his shoes with wings and exercised bravery, took his sword, went down to hell or Hades or a dark cave, however the story is interpreted, and used his shield to look at Medusa, because when you looked at Medusa in the eye, she turned you to stone and you died. So he used his shield and thought innovatively and creatively to see her reflection, and then defeated her, chopped her head off, came out of the cave, and holds up the head. And to me, it was just like this. I'm standing, all the snakes are going. And I'm standing in Florence looking at this like Renaissance statue, like with my background just a few years before, and it just captivated me. And so it always stuck with me. And so I love that. And so I say it's like we try to teach others how to be brave, think different, and celebrate victory.
Dude, what a brand.
So
with NIL now, and this is going to bring it full circle again. I'm not a former athlete, but really love mentoring and love being involved in, younger people's lives and giving them relative wisdom, but also kind of keeping them in check. But with this NIL thing, it's such an overwhelming, it's a mysterious thing that is still not completely, lined out. But what you're doing is you're trying to go and essentially help the future generation. When these guys they're getting real money. I mean, some of these guys are getting a few $1,000,000 a year, but schools like SMU, there's an announcement that every player on the football team was going to get like $30,000 this year or something.
Yep.
So what else comes with it other than just the entrepreneurial business side? But what part of being a father and someone that want to remove the brokenness from people? How are you helping with that as well?
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people swoop down on them. There's a lot of sharks in the water in this business of college sports and then pro sports. Well, let's be honest, college sports is pro sports, which is my big appeal, and why it's always annoyed me that we haven't called it that, because there's billions of dollars flowing into it. So I just feel like there's a lot of sharks in the water, and there's a lot of people looking out for themselves around these young men and women. And I just kind of wanted to be a neutral party to like give them the best possible life wisdom. Because then what I also saw was once they get to the pros, if they have not done that foundational work at healing or having a good head on their shoulders or having good people around them or taking sage advice and wisdom, then they blow it at the highest level. Some of them blow it at the college level. And so I just want to like teach them foundational principles. So like NIL is my way in the door because it's the buzzword, but I'm really just trying to teach them leadership and life skills at this stage. So I just teach them about personal branding, how they can really lean into being them, how they can utilize their social media for good. And I have all these examples of like, I've done all these brand deals with people through my Instagram and I'm nobody. So if they have all this attention on them, and that's what I'm trying to, help them capitalize on this moment. And then lastly, I would just say, I believe that and so most people are like, oh, personal branding, oh, you're just making it all about them. No. I believe that the foundation, and I try to teach them, the foundation of your personal brand could be serving others. And so I try to tap into their story and figure out what have they overcome, what is the hardest things they've been through. That will be a revelation into the population or where they can serve and have the most impact through their story.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
One of the best things when I was early in my career at Nike was a guy who told me, I prided myself on speaking the truth, but sometimes it can come across like harsh. And he said, totally respect. Always, if you're going to be willing to bring the problem, bring a solution with it. And so whenever I'm going to point out a problem,